Welcome to this walkthrough on Python variables. A variable is the common way to store values in a programming language, and Python has a few versions of its own. The first one being string for textual content, names, addresses, phrases, things like that. Integer, which would be whole numbers, positive or negative. Float, decimal numbers, so a fractional number. Boolean, which will be true or false, and a special value of none type. Variables, of course, allow the programs to store information, either collected or pre-programmed or retrieved elsewhere, and reuse it throughout the program. Variable naming. So, variables should have a clear and descriptive name, and Python programmers typically use lowercase words with underscores. Some good examples here. For age, user underscore name, account underscore balance, and some bad examples that you'll probably forget later and would leave someone else using your code lost and bewildered. It's important to understand that variables in Python cannot start with a number, cannot contain spaces in the name, nor can they use reserved Python keywords. You're probably not going to be able to call a variable print or class. If you're having a hard time with a variable, you may want to look to see if it is a reserved word. It may be one you didn't think of. Here's a couple examples of variable names that won't work. This one starting with a number, this one having a space in it, and class, which is surely a reserved keyword in a lot of languages. Let's run this example here. We need to select our kernel as we're using the interactive playbook for the first time. So we can see that we're assigning the value 30 to age, the name Alice to username, and this float value to account balance. And we're showing an example of simple print statements for each one of these variables. Let's talk about assignment versus comparison. This trips up new programmers a lot. I know it did myself. So a single equal sign is going to assign a value to a variable, but a double equal sign is going to compare a value to a variable value. So in this case, we're assigning the value 30 to age. We're then printing that variable value, which is 30. In this case here, what we're doing is we're comparing the value of age with the value 30, which is going to be true. In this third statement, we're comparing the value of age, which is 30, with the value 25, which is false. Strings are one of the most useful variable types in Python and many programming languages. In Python, there are various ways to encapsulate that string or delimit the start and end of a string. You can use a double quote, a single quote, or even triple quotes. What is very important to understand, though, is that you want to use a different delimiter type than what you have in your text. So in this phrase 1 example, we're using a quoted hello that the cashier had spoken, and we must enclose that in single quotes so we don't prematurely end that phrase with this double quote. In the second case, we're using a possessive with a single quote, so we don't want to include that phrase in double quotes. In the third phrase is an example of what you would do if you have both a single quote and a double quote in your string. In that case, we use triple quotes. To test these, we have this output here, and it is outputting each one of these print statements. Integers is our way to store whole values. That'll be a positive or negative number without decimals. It is important to understand that you simply change the value 5 to the string 5 with quotes. So pay attention when you write your code that you're intending to do an integer versus a string. We see here that number is the value 5, but text number is the string 5. We can print these out, and in the last case, we're using the type function to actually print the type of variable that we're working with. So if we just do the number that's going to be an integer. And if we do the text number, that's going to show as a string because we're assigning the value as a string delimited by double quotes. This is a good time to talk about Python being a dynamically typed language. Some programming languages do not allow you to change the type of a variable after it's created or even defined. Python, however, will change the type of variable whether you want it to or not. In this case, A is a string because we assigned a string value to it, and if we print the output, we get 5. If we print the type of the variable, it will tell us it's a string. The second example, we're assigning the value 5 to A, and A, being dynamically typed, simply changes to an integer without any knowledge to us other than checking the type of the variable. This can cause a lot of problems in your programming. So it's important if you're having issues with output or calculations to evaluate if Python is changing the type of the variable without your intent. Now, we can do the opposite, and we can tell a variable what it should be, or we can instruct output of a variable to change type in real time. That is called casting. In the example here, we're putting the string 5 into variable A and the value 2 into variable B. If we print what A is as far as a type using the type function, it's telling us it's a string. However, if we take the variable A and we cast it into an integer type back into variable A, we can now see that A is now an integer instead of a string because we casted the string into an integer and reassigned it to A. A changed its type on the fly. Now that we have two integers, A and B, we can print the sum of A and B and get the answer 7. Using variables and expressions. Often, we try to print an output that mixes variable types. This is very common in new programmers. We'll do this. So if we have the value 5 assigned to A and a string of 2 assigned to B, we cannot add these together. I'll show an example. If I remove this as a comment, it's not letting me do that at this time. But this would cause an error. But if we cast the value B, which is string 2, into an integer, back into variable B, we can now add A and B and get the answer 7. Boolean values. Boolean value is a variable type that is either true or false. It cannot be anything other than true or false. It would cover zeros and ones and anything that can be extrapolated into either true or false. In this case, we're assigning the value true. This is always one word capitalized, or false, again, one word capitalized. And when we print those outputs, we're not seeing the words true or false because it's not a string with quotes. It's an actual value of true or false. And if we use the type function to print what the type of the variable is, we'll see that it is bool. We can also create Boolean values on the fly by comparing things. So if we assign the value of 30 to the variable age, we can ask Python if age is equal to 30, and it will tell us it is true. And if we compare the age, which is the value 30, to 18, it will tell us it's false. We can also try comparing the value 5 with the string 5, and that is false. Python also has a none type, and that is simply the word none. And again, like true and false, it's capitalized and is not contained within quotes, which would make it a string. If we print the value of this variable result, we will now see it is none. And if we print the type of the variable, it will tell us it is none type. In a conditional statement, none is evaluated the same as false. It is also important to remember that none is the absence of value. An empty string will evaluate to none, but a string that is simply a space will be other than none because it has a value. An integer that is 0 is still a value of 0, so it won't necessarily be none. We end with an example of using a few different things that we learned today. Alice put into a name, and the string of 30 put into an age, which is now casted back into an integer, so it is now a number. And if we were to print the name and print the age, we will now see that we had a string and an integer. Even though they were both assigned as strings, we changed age, maybe correcting it into a value, and we can see that it is now an integer. Thank you for following along with this walkthrough. I will attach a link to this playbook in the video description.